quick. There we go. And that is referrals, okay? Recommendations and getting more recommendations, getting the right kind of recommendations is the single most important skill to gain to become an FSM in our business, to move forward and to win, to win things long term, right? A lot of people can go out and create a big initial names list, and some people can create really large initial names lists. In fact, I think everybody could create a bigger initial names list than what they have created. And probably no matter how many demos people have done initially, if push came to shove and they absolutely had to come up with somebody else from their personal network to do a demo for, most everybody could do that. Might have to get creative with some friends and getting some parents' phone numbers and various things like that. So the first thing I'll say is the number one source of good referrals for everybody is still always going to be yourself. Okay, that is by far one of your best resources is you. And I'll explain that as I go through the ABCs. I'm going to turn this to an ABC video, right? This is an ABCs of getting referrals, ABCs of building your business through more and better referrals. All right, so ABC. Let's go with A first. A stands for always. Those of you that are taking notes, you want to write down the word always. Now there's some sub points under always. One of the sub points is obviously always ask for referrals. Okay, on every demo, for example. No matter how good or bad the demo is, if they buy a big order, then definitely you want to get referrals from that person, because guess what? They probably know other people that can buy big orders, right? If they bought a small order, they know other people that can buy small orders and big orders. But people who buy, you definitely want to get recommendations from, because you want to be able to name drop that person that bought to the person that they recommended. You also want to get referrals from the people that don't buy, right? The people that even the demos that you think go terribly, you want to get referrals from those people, or at least want to ask, because it gives them a way out, right? You know how people are whenever they buy, they're all happy and they're giving you hugs and they're like, thank you so much for coming over. I'm excited to get my knives. And you just created a really happy scenario there. Well, the people that don't buy, you know what their reaction is like, or their response is at the end. Is, I'm really sorry I couldn't get anything. I really like it. And you did a great presentation. We hear them say things like that. But the reality is, they don't feel that good when they don't buy, right? We want our customers to feel good, right? So that's why we want them all to buy, because they feel better and we feel better. But we also give them a way to feel good if they don't buy by giving us some referrals. They still get to do something to help, right? And we need to understand that people want to help, right? If we're a nice person and friendly, and we make them feel good and give them some good compliments and build the right kind of rapport, they want to help, right? They want to help. If people like you and trust you, they'll find a reason and a way to buy from you, right? That's an old ancient vector wisdom. If people like you and trust you, they'll find a reason and a way to buy from you, right? Really important nugget to internalize. But by giving them a chance to give referrals, you give them a way out. They get a chance to feel good because they get a chance to do something for us. Okay, that's important. Next, under the banner of always, is you want to always be focused on referrals in the presentation. Okay, and from the beginning to the end, there are things basically on every single page of the demo in the blue book. There are things that we can do to plant seeds for the recommendations needed for the future. Okay, for example, on the company page, we can say, we've sold this much on this many customers, and virtually every customer that we have, Ms. Jones, is from word of mouth advertising, friends telling friends about products that they like and about people that they like. And that's the way we've been able to build our business. So at the end, I'm going to ask you for some introductions. Okay, and that's one thing that you want to change in your vocabulary is, instead of saying recommendations or referrals or leads, certainly don't say leads. Okay, that's very salesy. You want to say introductions, right? I'm going to ask you for some introductions. One of the reasons I've been really fortunate, Ms. Jones, to get introduced to a lot of really great people in this business. And Ms. Jones, now my number one reason for being here is not to sell you something. Okay, now I got to warn you, people do fall in love with this stuff, and it's really great. But I'm only allowed to let you get something if you really like it, you really want it, you think you definitely would use it, and you can afford it. And hopefully that sounds fair. But the main reason that I'm here is because I want you to like the product enough, and I want you to like me and my presentation enough that you'll be willing to introduce me to some people. I want to work really, really hard. I know if I can do 126 or 125 appointments this semester, that I'm going to definitely earn one of the scholarships, and it just depends on how high it'll be. And I'm willing to work my butt off, but I can only work my butt off because people are nice enough to give me lots of introductions. If I'm calling like one or two people to try to book one of my slots around school and everything, I may not be able to get people on their schedule and my schedule to coordinate. So I literally need to be calling hundreds. Actually, in order to do 125 appointments, I need to be calling thousands of people because their schedules and my schedules don't always, match up. And I need to be calling thousands of people in order to be able to work as hard as I want to work. And the only way I can do that is with introductions. So at the end, we'll talk more about how you can introduce me and help me toward my scholarship. Fair enough? Right? And Now we've planted the seed. Now we've started asking for referrals for introductions from the very beginning. Okay, and all throughout the presentation, there's ways to do it on the names and uses. You know, you talk about who. By the way, Mr. Smith or Mr. Miss Smith, who do you know that like really is big into barbecuing? Like they're the grill master. Maybe it's you, Mr. Smith, or maybe it's one of your neighbors or one of your relatives. But like when you have barbecues in the neighborhood, who like is the host that loves to do the grilling? Right. And they'll say, oh, so-and-so, you know, up the street on the corner, you know, the Johnsons, they throw the most amazing Labor Day or Memorial Day barbecue. So, okay, awesome. Well, what do they specialize in? They specialize in ribs or tri-tip or anything. Okay, ribs. Okay, well, look, I'm trying to collect barbecue recipes. And so at the end, when we do the introductions, you be sure to introduce me to the Johnsons, because even if they don't want to sit down and meet with me for my scholarship, I still want to ask them about some grilling tips. Okay. So there's a way you can, you know, plant that seed for the Johnsons, and you take and you write that down, Mr. Johnson, on the corner. You write that down on the demo verification form, or on the back of it somewhere, or on a scratch pad, whatever you've got. Right? You can talk about the spatula spreader or the slice and serve, and you talk about how easy it makes to get pies out of a pan. You say, one day I want to be a master chef at making pies, and I've really been looking lately for either a pecan pie or a blueberry pie recipe. Who do you know that makes the best blueberry pie or the best pecan pie? Right? And then you get that person. It's, oh, Mary Hardy down the street, or Mary Hardy at my church. She makes an amazing blueberry pie. Okay, awesome. So we'll have to make sure to introduce me to her, because I want to get that recipe. Right? And you're just planting those seeds throughout there. It's very simple, very easy, all the way through the demo. There's lots of ways to ask for those. And you're asking for people who obviously entertain and do nice things. If you're somebody who wants to be an engineer, and you're building rapport at the beginning, you're explaining what you're going to school for and what your goal is to be an engineer, you say at the end, later, and you say after you've done all that and talked about introductions, one of the things that really helps me out a lot is to get introduced to people that are in the industry that I would like to be in, engineering or whatever it happens to be. People who you know in that, I like to just pick their brain and find out what kind of secrets or tips that they have to be a better engineer, or to get into the right master's program to accomplish this, all networking, right? And that's all part of always asking throughout the entire presentation. The third and last point in the A, always, is you always want to be prospecting, right? Every time you're anywhere, you should be, just kind of being aware of who it is that you're meeting and what kind of people that you're meeting, and find a way to bring up Cutco in a conversation, perhaps, right? I try to wear something with Cutco on it all the time. I love wearing these shirts when I go out, or I have some t-shirts that have Cutco on them, and I've probably got 10, 15 presentations for people because of people asking me about my shirt on airplanes, and hotel elevators, all kinds of places. And so just by having the name recognition of Cutco, people say, oh my gosh, Cutco, you work for Cutco? And I'll say, yeah, for this, for 30 years. And they're like, oh my gosh, and we have Cutco, and we've had it for this long, and they say what they have. And then I kind of ask them investigative questions like, oh great, who's your rep, right? To see if they have a rep that they work with continuously or consistently. I'll say, oh yeah, so how long have you had it? They've had this long. Now, do you have like a big set in a wood block, or do you have just some individual items that you have down in your drawer? And I just ask some questions like that, and it kind of massages the conversation along to that, hey, I can have somebody, I know some representatives in your area, and the best thing to do, and I always say the best thing to do is have a rep, like have somebody that's there. You can get emails a couple of times a year with some discounts, and some specials that happen, and you could complete your set at the very best price whenever you have your own rep. And also you're helping out a college student that probably is trying to earn a scholarship, and the more people that they have on their list, the more people that they talk to, the increases their chances of their scholarship, right? So that's what I will do personally. Okay, you can have people in your life to do that for you, or you can learn how to have that conversation on your own. But just being really friendly, just being really friendly and nice to everybody that you meet can make a big difference. So A for always stands for always ask on every appointment, no matter what. Stands for always be asking and planting seeds throughout the presentation, and always be prospecting, always be looking for for people. The B, let me remind myself what my B stands for. Okay. My B stands for brainstorm. Okay. So when you're asking for recommendations, or all through the demonstration, as you're always planting seeds, you're also always brainstorming, right? You're always thinking about understanding the number one reason why we're there to do an appointment is not to sell Cutco. It truly is not, right? Cutco sells itself. I mean, we can present it in a better light and hopefully get bigger orders than average, but Cutco is going to sell itself, right? We can do a very average, even below average Cutco presentation and still get orders. But what we want to make sure we're doing is we always want to be thinking about, and in the forefront of our mind is always the introductions at the end. And so we always want to be brainstorming. Once someone is jotting down introductions at the end, that's when we can get really good at brainstorming. and helping to ask certain questions to help them think of more people. Who do you know questions are what you want to ask. You don't want to say, do you know anybody who blah, blah, blah. You want to say, who do you know who blah, blah, blah. Okay. So who do you know who lives in blank neighborhood, right? If you don't think you have, quote, good leads, okay, that's mostly in your head, because anybody who's a Mac, anybody who is married, owns a home and lives in a house, owns their own home, that's a good customer, okay? But in your mind, if you think you need people who make a certain amount of money or who have a certain amount of nice things in their life or live in certain neighborhoods, if that's in your mind, that's a limiting belief, well then either change the limiting belief or just get those kind of recommendations, right? Anybody can get any kind of recommendations they want within 2 weeks. If you're sitting there thinking, oh, my lead list is terrible, right? Well, okay, it's terrible right now, but if you're still saying that in a week and a half to 2 weeks, that's nobody's fault but your own, okay? Anybody can work their way into nicer areas if that's what you think you need, okay? I worked my way into a really nice upper middle class community, and I did really well. Then I worked my way into really nice communities, like very wealthy people, and I didn't do so well. I didn't relate. I wasn't from that kind of place, and I didn't do nearly as well, especially at first. I eventually kind of figured out through practice and asking questions of my mentors and other people that did make a lot of sales to more affluent people, that I just wasn't relating to them properly in the first place. I was always big on saving money and all this, how they could change their cooking habits and they could save thousands and thousands of dollars over the course of a few years. And the people that were really wealthy that didn't appeal to them the same way it appealed to my middle class and lower middle class families that I did a lot of my early appointments for. So, but the point is, you can work your way into any kind of neighborhood you want. Find a neighborhood that you'd like to do demos in, where you feel like, these are homemaker houses in your mind, because when you see houses and, you think in terms of, that's a galley house, that's a homemaker house, that's an ultimate house, right? As a rep, you kind of start thinking that way. Just figure out what those neighborhoods are and ask for those names, right? Literally say, hey, I've got a couple of introductions in Rolling Hills. That's a neighborhood in my area here. In Rolling Hills, who do you know who else lives in Rolling Hills, right? And so you can ask for questions like that, right? Whenever you're getting recommendations, you can ask for anything that you want. People that have certain kinds of jobs, people that do certain types of cooking, people who like nice things, right? One thing I found, Mr. Jones, that anyone that drives a Lexus, BMW, or Mercedes, or a Tesla, they seem to be some of my best customers, because they obviously like quality things. They can afford to get it if they really want to, if you know what I mean, right? I don't say give me rich people, but you can ask certain questions that help guide them to the kind of people that you think you need for referrals. Okay, don't just be be a victim to, oh, my leads list isn't any good. Okay, first get max, right? Who do you know who lives in a home, owns their own home? Who do you know who's married and between 30 and 60 years old, right? Get those kind. Who do you know who has kids? Who do you know who cooks a lot? Who do you know who likes quality things? Those are all kind of things that you can do to help the customer brainstorm during the presentations. Okay. And also you want to brainstorm once they give you the list of names. Let's say you use the peeler and you get some people give a peeler for 15 names. By the way, if you're not offering that to every single customer, you are absolutely throwing leads down the drain and throwing money down the drain. Offer everybody, use the incentives, right? If we're not, we must, that goes under the always category. We must be asking or offering that every single time, because you have somebody that says, oh, I don't really know very many people, and they give you 2, right? But then you say, oh, by the way, I failed to mention this. If you can get to 15, you get this peeler for free, and I can leave it here with you right now. Really? And all of a sudden, now they're writing. Okay, now all of a sudden, they just met a whole bunch of people. Okay, so we must be offering that every single time. So using those incentives, that's all part of the brainstorming. Okay, the brainstorming too. So that's the B. So A is always asking, always be prospecting, always be planting seeds. B is brainstorming, always be brainstorming from the beginning to the end, right? And then the last thing is comfortable, okay, or comfort, right? Do you ever have customers that say, I'm just not comfortable giving out the names and numbers of my friends, or I'm not comfortable until I talk to them first, or something like that, right? You ever stop to think why they're not comfortable? And by the way, just if somebody else had done that presentation, someone with a lot more skill at planting the seeds and building the rapport and all that type of thing, do you realize that there's a very, very high likelihood that the customer would not be saying, I'm not comfortable, to somebody else who maybe has more experience or is better at this particular part of the job? I say this because not to make you feel bad, but to help you realize that whoever you are listening to this video or watching this recording, you can improve. You can improve on this particular aspect of the business. And the number one reason why people aren't comfortable is because the rep isn't comfortable in asking. Okay, so think about how comfortable am I asking for the recommendations. The whole presentation, we're always asking things, and the customer responds by complying and doing what we're asking because we're comfortable in asking those things. right? But at the end, I know how it is because I can still remember. It was a long time ago, but I still remember the discomfort that I felt sometimes asking for those recommendations, right? So if I'm not comfortable in asking, guess what that makes the customer? That makes them not comfortable in giving, okay, in recommending or in introducing. So how do we do that? Well, it mostly comes with just practice, okay? Practice, practice, practice. So I'm going to end this workshop, my part of the workshop, by saying, if you're in an office with some other people together, as soon as this is over, absolutely critical, let's test, okay? Let's test how well we know the basic approach on referrals, okay, and how comfortable we are in saying it. If we're having to mince for words or remember a word, or we put in some extra little maybes, could you possibly, would you, or I find it funny when reps say, yeah, if you could just jot down a couple of people, right, or a couple of names, right, and of course when they ask for a couple of names, what do they get? They get two, right, because that's what they ask for. But people, you might be, causing, well, not you might, if you're not, don't feel like you're getting as many recommendations as someone else might be getting, then it's almost always assured that you're causing it, okay, believe it or not. It's not just the customers, signed a blood pact. I did have someone one time literally say, no, we signed a pact. We literally signed a pact with my friends that we weren't gonna do that, right? And of course, I wasn't sure what to do at that point, but I just did my universal answer to objections and said, I could totally understand exactly how you feel, Mr. Smith. And in fact, if it were anybody but me, I wouldn't want to give out the names either, but I promise it'll just be me. And I promise you that I will treat your friends with the same courtesy and respect that I treated you. Does that sound fair? Right. And I ended up getting like 7 or 8 referrals from the person. And later on, as I was leaving, or thinking about it a few days later, actually, I thought to myself, every single person that they know, every person they work with, every person they go to church with, every person that, in the entire street, they all sign. How big is this blood pact? How big is this list, that they must have signed, which they probably didn't even sign, but they were probably just trying to make it a point. But it couldn't have been every person that they knew, right? And so maybe they didn't write down the people that, they'd quote had this pact with. Maybe they just wrote on other people, right? Because I'm not looking for, buyers. I'm looking for lookers. But anyway, after when we finish this recording in about 1 minute, just practice it, okay? Managers, just point to somebody and say, go. Give me the approach, right? And see, and if they can get it, awesome, give them a high five. If they can't get it, then say, okay, look, let's take 10 minutes, let's work on it, okay? Get their training manual out, get the script or whatever script you're using, sit down in a corner and read it out loud to yourself, 10 times, and then read it to somebody else a couple of times, and then let's try it again, okay? Because number one most important thing, if you're not comfortable in asking because you don't know the words and you don't have the approach down well enough, you're going to cause the customers to be uncomfortable in responding with the response that you want by jotting down introductions. Okay, so hopefully those are some awesome nuggets that you could use, and we are going to stop the recording.